and this cake is burnt to a crisp. To a crisp. Welcome, friends. Welcome back to the kitchen. Welcome back to Sunday morning and the old cookbook show. Today, we are going to do another recipe out of this cookbook, the Battersea Polytechnic Training Department of Domestic Science Household Cookery Recipes. I've decided to do another recipe out of this book because I feel the book needs to redeem itself after what happened last Sunday. Okay.
So the pastry is lovely and buttery and crispy.
Nope. Nope.
I shouldn't even try it.
Nope. 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 Nope.
Wow, he's not even going to chew it. So the pastry's really good. Wow.
Yeah, that wasn't good. Not good at all. The rough puff pastry was amazing, and I will be redoing the rough puff pastry recipe as its own video, probably next week. Today we're going to do Housekeepers Cake, and I wanted to do this recipe so the book could redeem itself, but also to talk about this idea of reverse creaming. Starts out with us mixing together flour and butter. Oh, that's going to stick. And butter. So we'll get that in the stand mixer and get it going. And I call this reverse creaming because the vast majority of cake recipes, vast majority, not everyone, I know there's outliers, and I know there's people who are going to tell me about the outliers, but the vast majority start out with putting butter in and creaming it with the sugar first. Then we would add the egg, and then we would take our wet ingredients and put the wet ingredients in back and forth with the flour at the end. This method inhibits, this reverse creaming method, inhibits the growth of long chains of gluten, which will give, or should give, a much more tender crumb. Although I have to tell you, if you make a regular cake and you mix it correctly, those long chains of gluten will not form. And I think that gluten is one of those things that a lot of people don't fully understand, and as much as I've studied it and studied it and studied it, I have a tenuous grip on it myself. How this reverse creaming works is that, so let's talk about gluten first. So gluten does not exist in that flour yet. There are two proteins in the flour that as soon as you add water, the two proteins come together and they form gluten. When you are baking, you're either trying to promote that gluten from forming long chains. So if you're baking bread, you want it to form long chains to promote elasticity. If you're baking a cake or muffins or something, you don't want that gluten to form onto other gluten to form those longer chains. You just want the gluten to stay as one gluten molecules. By rubbing the butter and the flour together, the butter, the fat, could be any fat, coats the flour and inhibits the gluten formation. It doesn't stop gluten formation, it just inhibits it. Gluten is still going to form. As soon as we add a liquid, in this case milk, which is mostly water, but as soon as we add the milk, gluten will start to form. We're just inhibiting the gluten from forming, and we're inhibiting those long chains of gluten. And for those people that are super pedantic, yes, yes, there is water in the butter. And so yes, theoretically, some gluten is already forming in the mixer because the water in the butter is interacting with the flour, causing causing some of the proteins to come together to form the beginnings of gluten. You can't get away from it. It's going to happen. It's how you deal with it for your finished product. Whether you want a bread with long gluten chains or you want a cake or a muffin with short gluten chains. You just have to live with it. Next in, it says to add the fruit and the sugar. So it says raisins. Put the raisins in. It calls for 1 ounce of candied peel. So there's 1 ounce of candied peel. Now, the recipe asks for sultanas. I looked in the cupboard this morning. I didn't have sultanas. But really what I'm taking from this recipe is that it's asking for 2 different kinds of raisins, either for a flavor differential, a differential in color, or possibly just in texture. What I do have are currants. Currants are another type of raisin. They're made from the Corinthian grape, Corinthian currant. So in those go, and in goes the sugar. Uh-oh, I was talking so much about the gluten, I almost forgot the baking soda. In that goes, and it calls for some spice. So in goes the spice. This is mixed spice, English mixed spice. It's a mix of spices. If you are in Canada, this is essentially pumpkin pie spice. A little bit different, but close enough to pumpkin pie spice to be pumpkin pie spice. What I love about recipes from sort of pre-World War II is that the book does not dictate to you what you have to use in a lot of these instances, merely a suggestion. And this is a great example. Spice. All it says is spice. You can put in any spice that you like. And in fact, every time you make this cake, you could change the spice. You could use cinnamon, you could use nutmeg, you could use a mix like I did. You could put in allspice, which isn't a mix, it's just one spice. You could put in, I don't know, smoked paprika. If you like smoked paprika, it might work. You are autonomous and have the freedom to make your own decisions. So, next in, we need 1 egg. So I'm going to put that into a jug. And it says to add a little bit of milk. How much is a little bit of milk? This is pre-metric English cookbook, so obviously an imperial little bit. I'm going to say that. Once we mix it together, we will have the ability to add a little bit more if we need it. So we break up the egg. And the recipe says to add this in, and we want a rather stiff consistency. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to say we nailed it. That's pretty stiff. Yeah, that's pretty stiff. So I don't want to add any more milk to that. I may have even added a little bit too much. I think there's probably a lot of leeway here in what we could do. So I have a 9x9 tin prepared. So I'll get this off and we'll get the tin over here. Okay, here we go. 9x9 buttered with parchment paper, and we'll get this in. Might even be too big. Huh. Let's see. Okay, 9-inch square, too big. 9-inch square, too big. I don't have an 8-inch square, so I'm going to try an 8-inch round, and we'll see where that goes. Just like where it just says spice, you were expected, as a home cook, to just use what you have. No one expected you to run out and buy a certain type of cake tin or size or shape. You used what you had on hand. Unlike today where, I see recipes and people admonish you to go and buy a certain cake tin from a certain manufacturer, otherwise you're surely to fail. Come on, give me a break. There's no way. You just don't need to do that. Just use with what you've got. And really, all you need to do is vary your cooking time a little bit based on whether you made it in a bigger pan or a smaller pan, whether it's taller or shallower, those sorts of things. And since most recipes, early recipes, don't give you any sort of time, it's up to you to know when to pull it out. This one does. Tells me hot oven, which, we could debate that forever. What is a hot oven? Today I've chosen 425. And it says 1.5 to 2 hours. Now this is an incredibly thick, sturdy batter, right? Very thick and sturdy. Now it says to drudge the top in sugar, which I'm doing here. It says caster sugar. Caster sugar, nothing called caster sugar is sold where I live, so I'm using super fine sugar. It's often packaged as berry sugar or quick dissolving sugar. I think that's drudged. Is that drudged? Off to the oven we go. I'm going to set my timer for 45 minutes to take my first look at it, and then I'll decide from there how much longer. Okay, so as soon as I walked out into the studio, I could tell that this was a problem. It's been 45 minutes. Now, let me reread this. Bake in a hot oven from 1.5 to 2 hours. 425 is at the low end of hot oven. Low end of hot oven. 45 minutes is half the lowest amount of time. And this cake is burnt to a crisp. To a crisp. And no, the fan is not on. I know this is a fan oven. The fan is not on. Burnt to a crisp. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to do it again. Maybe I'll only bake it for 20 minutes this time. Oh! What? Okay, so, yeah. I mean, it's completely burnt on the bottom. What are all the things that could have gone wrong? I thought maybe I put too much sugar on the top and the sugar burnt, but the sugar burnt the bottom. I weighed all of my ingredients. I double check everything. I do this for a living. I double check, I double check, I double check. My oven is correctly calibrated. I know that because I check it almost every month. I put it onto a clean cycle every month, and then I check the temperature every month just to make sure that it's right. Again, I make my living with this oven, so it has to be right. All I can think of is the time. The time is just way off. So, another fail with this cookbook, but I am going to do it again. I am going to do it again this afternoon, and we'll see what happens. Okay, take 2. We'll drudge it with sugar. Again, what is the word they actually use? Drudge? Dredge. Dredge the top with sugar. And this time I spared you me remixing it. I did everything exactly the same. The only difference this time is I didn't have any more candied peel. So there's no candied peel in here. It is just the raisins and the last little bit of currants that I had. So let's talk about temperature. It says a hot oven. Hot oven, there are so many different ranges of hot oven that are given. Generally what I chose at 425 on the last bake is in the middle of what is considered a hot oven. When I go back through these old books, I always read the forward and the end plate to see if they give a range of temperatures. What I found is that online, 2025, well, 2026 now, online, 2026, you go to a website and you're going to be faced with exactly the same range of temperatures on almost every website. That doesn't mean they're right. That just means that pretty much every website, blogger, webmaster has just cut and pasted the same chart from somewhere else. See that all the time. When you go back into the old books, in the transition period between just, stick it in the oven and actual temperatures, they will often have a chart at the beginning that sort of gives you what their interpretation of the transition. And those temperatures often don't match with the given chart, the common knowledge chart of 2026. So, having said all of that, I've chosen 350 this time, and I'm really considering 325. Given the density of this cake, I'm considering 325, and I'm going to turn it down to 325. Let's give it 325. It's 350 now, but we'll stick it in and it'll be okay. And I'm still going to come back at 45 minutes and take a look at that again and see what happens. It starts at 350, but the temperature will come down to 325 fairly quickly. And the temperature in an oven oscillates wildly. Some ovens are much better than others. This one is really good. It doesn't have a lot of oscillations. It doesn't have any hot spots or cold spots. The gas oven that I have inside does have some hot spots, some cold spots, and a little bit wilder oscillation. This one is really good. Now, since we're dissecting the recipe, let's dissect the recipe. I've worked with a lot of recipe developers over the years, and what I've learned is, even from a functional standpoint of making a recipe, a written recipe should have the ingredients in the order that you're going to use them. So you can read down the ingredient list and see what you're going to use as you need them. This is not in that order. This is not in that order at all. you see people who want to give their own flair to a recipe. They're writing a recipe and they want their own flair. And often if it's chicken parm, or, well, that's a bad example because chicken is the, yeah, no, let's say chicken parm. Chicken will be the number one ingredient. Even though you may not need to get to the chicken until 10 ingredients in, chicken will be the top ingredient, and then all of the other ingredients will be higgledy-piggledy. Or because it's called chicken parm, chicken's at the top because chicken is the ingredient that's in the title. Again, it doesn't show them in the right order. And if a really readable, understandable recipe has the ingredients in the order that you're going to use them. Not the case here. Hoping that's not why I screwed up. I didn't forget anything, and I rechecked all of the measurements, so we're good. It calls for a teaspoon of bicarbonate of soda, baking soda. Now, there's no acid in this recipe to activate it. The raisins, the sultanas, might be slightly acidic, but not really acidic. So they're not going to give any leavening. The bicarbonate of soda really isn't going to give a lot of leavening because it's not an acidic environment. If there had been brown sugar or molasses as the sweetener, you would get some leavening. First time I read the recipe, I thought, oh, maybe they really wanted baking powder, which is a dry acid, usually cream of tartar, not always, but usually cream of tartar, mixed with bicarbonate of soda. And when you add a liquid, they activate, the pH and the acid activate and cause the leavening. That's not the case here. Now, soda in a recipe does a whole bunch of other things. It acts as it really acts as a softener. That's maybe not the right word, but it acts as a softener. Other than that, I don't really know what could go wrong here. Size of pan doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters to the cooking time, but coming back at 45 minutes instead of an hour and a half in order to check would be okay. Definitely would be okay. It shouldn't it shouldn't have burnt to that. That's for sure. Well, we'll see what happens.
Hey, Glenn.
Hey, Jules.
Hey, friends.
I give you.
That looks like a learning opportunity.
Yes.
Tell me more. What did you learn?
Well, I learned that I'm 0 for 2 in recipes out of this book. I chose another recipe thinking that this book could redeem itself after the kidney fail.
No, the kidney fail is really, that's about you not liking
It's
it.
about me not liking it. Yes.
The recipe itself seemed to like the tech. All the parts were okay, but yeah, no, you'll have to like
Lots
that.
of opinions about the steak and kidney pie video and the recipe and what was wrong with it.
The reality is Glenn just doesn't like kidney.
I don't like kidney.
That's it.
So I thought I'd try Housekeepers Cake.
Okay. This version looks okay. That.
Well, let's see.
This version seems okay.
Okay.
What happened there?
This has a really good texture.
I like the crispiness at the top.
I was expecting it to be stodgy, like dense and stodgy, like a. But it's crumbly, isn't it? Like it falls apart really. Which is because we did the reverse creaming. We didn't build any gluten. There's no gluten built in this at all.
Is that the instructions? Or you just decided?
It is the instructions. They don't call it reverse creaming, but it is the instructions.
What? They didn't just invent reverse creaming? That's been around since. Let me check it out.
So
Insert
the
date
texture
here.
is amazing. What I learned was that the 1.5 to 2 hour baking time listed in
long?
the recipe in a hot oven was too long. So 45 minutes at 325. This is the difference between 45 minutes at 325 and 45 minutes at 425.
Well, I think that's part of the challenge, though, of what is a hot oven, a quick oven,
Yeah.
a slow oven.
And a lot of recipe books will use hot oven, and a lot of recipe books will use quick oven to mean the same thing. And then you look at the charts online, and they all sort of codify to one idea. But when you look through this one does not have a chart. But when you look through a lot of these books during the transition period, there's a chart that does not conform to the one that people would point to today. They had a completely different idea of what was going on because they were still figuring it out. Anyway, Housekeepers Cake, actually a win.
Despite our first attempt?
You need to, if you're going to be in the kitchen and you're going to try new things, that is going to happen. And I have to admit that if you don't know, this is a studio. This is not our home kitchen. I put it in the oven, set the timer for 45 minutes, knowing that I had to come back at an hour and a half, but knowing 45 minutes was kind of where I wanted to look at it. Mm-hmm. I went out of the studio into the house to clean the dishes and do everything. If I had been cooking that in my kitchen, I would have smelled it.
Yeah. Most cakes, cookies, most things that you cook, they have this, and then you can start smelling them in the house, and then you're like, oh,
it's almost done. It's almost done. And then you go and you look at it and you say, oh, it's been 35 minutes. Why is it almost done? Well, I'm going to pull it out of the oven because it's almost done. So that would not have happened if I had been
life.
Yeah, if I had been baking it inside, I would have been able to monitor it more closely. Oh well.
Wow, that's quite the rock.
Yeah. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.